Oh my, so all of you standing in the back, if you'd like a seat, please go meet your neighbor whose hand is raised so they don't have to keep it raised the whole service. That would be uncomfortable. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. Our mission here is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. A bit of an uphill battle, sometimes it seems. My name is Mary Jo Hennessy, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. Since you have all made the effort of getting up, putting on clothing, maybe having coffee or juice, and coming here today, please take the moment now to turn off those electronic devices, disconnect your mind from your to-do list, and try to be here for yourselves and each other as fully as possible for this next hour. And if you are a newcomer, please visit our welcome table in Fellowship Hall, where you can find more information about our congregation and can sign up to receive The Beat, our weekly email newsletter that you get once on Wednesday and is great reading. So please make sure you sign up, and those of you who've already been getting it and forgetting to read it, habits can be formed. So go ahead and click onto it, because you learn everything that is going on here at Sunnyhill, and you do not want to miss out, because there are always a lot of very interesting and entertaining events coming up. And if you are a newcomer and would like to be greeted as such, during coffee hour, please take a red mug, and members will seek you out and to make sure you are warmly welcomed. If your toddler gets restless, or you yourself decide you need to hum a tune because you've got that earworm going on, there is an infant care room in the back. Go out the center doors, make a left. You will be able to hear and see the service, but not be heard. Now, we have a special announcement from our very hard service auction team, hard-working service auction team, about our annual service auction, which is taking place on March 28th. Ms. Elizabeth Mortimer. I think we should hear it for the service auction team.
So I'm Elizabeth. I am one of many people on the service auction team. And just some really quick announcements today. Our service auction is planned for March 28th, so everyone please mark your calendars for Saturday, March 28th. It's going to take place here. The auction is Sunnyhill's largest social event of the year. If you want to be somewhere, you want to come here, have lots of fun. We usually have about 120, 130 congregants that come. You can bring your friends, you can bring your neighbors. So what do you need to do right now to plan for the service auction? Number one, put it on your calendar. Number two, figure out what you're going to donate. So in the past, we can never ever have enough parties or workshops or classes. So if you can possibly offer one of those, that would be fabulous. And we're doing something new this year, where if you're a new member and you're interested in doing something like that, but you're a little gun shy, we will pair you with a congregant that has been doing this for many, many years. So if you would like to get more information about that, about pairing, we're glad to set you up with that. Another thing we're going to need you to get going on are physical donations. So we've had to move up our deadline for physical donations. We are hoping for all of them by March 1st. So that would be a gift card or a gift certificate. It might be a handmade item that you've made. It might be a basket that your chalice circle is going in together to make. We are going to be out in the Fellowship Hall following every service between now and March 28th, so please come by and see us today. We are also taking RSVPs to attend. Everything is online. All the links are on our website. Mary Jo, am I missing anything? She's on our team too.
Although Elizabeth introduced this as a social event, and it really is a lot of fun. It is also the largest fundraiser of the year. So these ladies have a burden on their shoulders of about $30,000 we need to raise. So they have broad shoulders, but not that broad. So we must help them. So step up, step forward, and if you've never been, if you've never contributed, it's really easy and it's really fun. So, and if you don't, we'll seek you out anyway. So visit them at the table after service. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. Come see us.
Our opening words are a poem titled Optimism by Jane Hirschfield. More and more, I've come to admire resilience. Not the simple resilience of a pillow whose firm foam returns over and over to the same shape, but the sinuous tenacity of a tree. Finding the light newly blocked on one side, it turns in another. A blind intelligence, true, but out of such persistence arose turtles, rivers, mitochondria, figs, all this resinous, untractable earth. And if you will now please join me in saying the words for lighting our chalice. We kindle our chalice as a reminder that light shines in the darkness, that trees grow in rocky places, that hope persists despite despair, that love will always drive out fear.
Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn for the Earth Forever Turning.
If there are any children who'd like to come forward, please do so now. All right, this is a story about a young woman who is going through a really hard time in her life. And she had grown up and left home, but you know how it is when things are going wrong, and sometimes you just need to be with your mom. And so she went to her mom and talked to her about the many challenges she was facing in her life. She wasn't able to find a job that she really loved. And some of the people that she thought were her really close friends turned out not to be very good friends after all. And she was just having a really hard time getting through this little rough patch that she was in. And her mother said, you know, I want to show you something. And she took her into the kitchen, and the mom put 3 pots of water on the stove and brought the water up to a boil. And then in each of the 3 pots, she put something. In one pot, she put some carrots. In another pot, she put some eggs. And in the third pot, she put some ground coffee beans. And they sat there waiting together in silence for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then the mother turned off all the burners on the stove and fished out the things from the 3 pots. And she said to her daughter, "Tell me what you see in each of these things." And the daughter took out the carrots and she said, "Well, they've kind of gotten soft and mushy." And Mom said, "That's right." And she said, "What about the eggs?" And the daughter looked at the eggs and cracked one. And instead of being all liquidy inside, it had become hard and firm. It was a hard-boiled egg by that time. And then the coffee had become coffee. It was no longer just the beans. It had transformed itself into coffee that smelled great and that you could drink. And the mother said to her daughter, she said, "You see how each of these 3 things reacted differently to the same stressful situation, that is being put in boiling water." She said, "Sometimes things that start out hard and firm can get kind of soft and fluky under stress, right? And sometimes things that start out sort of liquidy can get hard and firm. And then some things, like the coffee, not only change themselves, but change the very water that they find themselves in." And she said, this is my reminder to you that you have a choice when you're in stressful situations about how you handle that. She said, you can become softer and sort of just give up. You can become harder, or you can work to change yourself and the situation around you so that you might create something altogether new. So I'd like us to keep that in mind as we face stressful situations in our world and our lives, that we have choices about how we can handle those. And with that, we're going to sing you out to your requests.
As you care team, whose task it is to reach out to members of Sunnyhill going through difficult life events, whatever they may be, offering the loving presence that binds our community together. If you want to get in touch with us, you can contact us directly or call the church office or send an email to pastoralcare@sunnyhill.org. Each week at this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of the congregation. We share the things that we are celebrating, as well as the things we are mourning, so that they need not be held alone. Joys and sorrows may be submitted online from the website or handwritten and submitted at the welcome table in the fellowship hall. After each joy and sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." This joy and sorrow from Carla Parata Cumming. After almost 4 years, my business Life Back Massage Therapy is still open. There have been many ups and downs as I strive to be successful. Please pray, send positive energy that we make it through a therapist who has suddenly left, and me, who's pregnant and being out for the summer. To Carla, her business, and her pregnancy.
We all hold you in our hearts.
This joy from Elizabeth Scanlon. This week we celebrated Brandon's 18th birthday. As part of the celebration, Brandon was presented with an envelope that contained messages for him from all the friends and family that celebrated his birth. That included my mother and dad and Tom's mother, all deceased. Lots of thoughts about what was important in life, well lived, and one of my friends actually put a giant airplane sticker on his car. We were all in joyful tears as we shared the long ago memory. To Elizabeth, Brandon, and family,
We hold you in our hearts.
this joy from Just Mazer. I celebrated my 18th anniversary of my kidney transplant with my sister Janet. Both Janet and Jeff are healthy and doing well. I just heard Jeff retired. To Jeff and his family,
We hold you in our hearts.
let us take a moment of silence to bear in mind these joys and sorrows, as well as those that are held too closely to be shared. All we have carried through the seasons of our lives has brought us here to this place made sacred by our coming together. May we hold all that we carry in the warm embrace of this loving community.
Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Beyond and beneath the rumbling and roaring, beyond and beneath the chaos and cacophony, beyond and beneath the storms and sorrows, a still small voice calls us to listen, calls us to pause and be still, calls us to slow down and ease up. Let us take a moment of stillness, a moment of silence, to listen simply and intently to what waits below the din and discord of everyday life. when we are still enough, when we allow peaceful silence to enter our noisy lives, when we take a moment to stop doing and simply be, we may hear a clear, calming voice singing a comforting song that has been with us all along. May we listen to the voice of stillness, and may our best and truest selves emerge, humming, sighing, singing. Amen. What a week we have had. I think it's fair to say that we are living in stressful times. The recent impeachment proceedings, the upcoming elections, environmental degradation and climate change, the threat of gun violence, and escalating violence of all kinds against marginalized groups, economic uncertainty for those who are not wealthy, extreme social and political polarization, and a seemingly never-ending stream of bad news from our newspapers and on our television, computer, and phone screens. All of these things combine to create an acutely stressful situation for many of us. And it's not just the times that we're living in that are stressful, but we also experience stress in our personal lives, from relationship problems, health challenges, the deaths of loved ones, losing a job or working in a job that is toxic, problems with money, challenges with aging parents, challenges with our children, and sometimes a number of these things all at once bearing down like a great dark weight on our very souls. Conventional wisdom over the past 50 years or so has been that stress is bad for us, that we need to reduce or eliminate stressors, sources of stress from our lives. I think we've all heard that advice before, something like that. The idea is that if you identify the causes of stress and find ways to get rid of them or mitigate them, then you'll end up being a happier person who will live a longer and healthier life. But is this wisdom correct, or possible, or even desirable? Last summer I was thinking about all these things about stress and the many challenges that we face as individuals and as a society as I was on a week of study leave. Each year, For the past 5 years, I've spent a week reading and writing and hiking in the Yadkin Valley area of North Carolina, just west of Winston-Salem. And one day, as I was hiking last August, I came upon a tree growing in solid rock. I took a picture of the tree, which you can see on the screens. It's the only growing thing that can be seen on this stretch of rock, and while there are many beautiful trees growing on the edge of this rocky outcropping, this tree stands entirely alone as the one green thing jutting forth from the rock. It's a small tree, maybe only 3 or 4 feet tall, but there it stood, apparently healthy and thriving in what seemed to me to be an entirely inhospitable environment for trees. After I returned home, I did a little research to see how it is possible for trees to grow in the middle of rock with no soil to nurture them. I found some fascinating information, including this written by Scout Wilkins in an article about how trees manage to grow in rocky places. Normally, tree roots grow downward in response to growth hormones, but under stress, roots will grow toward any nutrient source. In cliffs, roots may follow a lateral crack back into the rock until they find a vertical fissure. They fan out in a plane within that fissure until they encounter another crack going deeper. Filling that crack, they can fan out along another fissure, creating several planes of root mass, which suck up every available bit of nutrients and moisture over a wide area. Wilkins continues, most trees have a symbiotic relationship with fungi that live in or on side of their roots. On cliffs, these fungi etch the rock with enzymes, breaking it down into compounds the tree can use, and channeling the nutrients directly to the tree. There are even types of algae that grow inside the rocks themselves and supply nitrogen. Trees on cliffs, Wilkins says, clearly reap real benefits from growing in such hostile environments. Once established, they face far less competition from other plants. The risk of fire and physical damage is less. Trees on cliffs often stay small, which lessens the need for nutrients and protects them from becoming weak and blowing over. Even with these adaptations to the lousiest imaginable growing conditions, one might not expect trees on rocks to live long. But paradoxically, when trees do grow from these tough cliff environments, they can actually outlive their counterparts in a rich forest environment by a factor of 20 or more. In fact, there have been cases documented of trees that typically would live for 50 years that can live up to 1,000 years if they're growing from rock. So this scrubby little tree that I saw may have been one of the oldest trees in the entire forest that surrounds it. This tree found a way not just to survive, but to thrive in a stressful environment. But if it's true for trees that there are ways in which stress can be helpful to health and longevity, is it also true for people? It turns out that stress can in fact be beneficial to life and living if we have a certain attitude toward that stress. In a recent TED Talk, health psychologist Kelly McGonigal cites an NIH-funded study that tracked 30,000 adults in the US for 8 years. They started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? Then they asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then at the end of the study, they used public death records to find out who among their study subjects had died. The bad news was that people who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including the people who had relatively little or no stress. In other words, according to this study, stress is harmful to you only if you believe that it is harmful. If you do not believe it is harmful, stress actually decreases your chance of dying and is better for you than having little or no stress in your life. Just think about that for a moment. Stress can actually be good for us if we have a certain attitude toward that stress. If you're wondering about the physical mechanisms that are at work in this phenomenon of stress that is good for you, it has to do, in part, with oxytocin, a neurohormone that primes you to do things that strengthen close relationships. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your family and friends. It enhances your empathy. It even makes you more willing to help and support the people that you care about. There's been a lot written about oxytocin in recent years. I've seen it sometimes called the cuddle hormone. But something that's not often noted is that oxytocin is a stress hormone. Your pituitary gland releases oxytocin as part of the body's stress response. It's as much a part of your stress response as the adrenaline that makes your heart pound. As McGonigal says, when oxytocin is released in the stress response, it is motivating you to seek support. Your biological stress response is nudging you to tell someone how you feel instead of bottling it up. Your stress response wants to make sure you notice when someone else in your life is struggling so that you can support each other. When life is difficult, your stress response wants you to be surrounded by people who care about you. In other words, during times of stress, our bodies try to steer us toward one another, toward compassionate and loving relationships, toward the kind of healing that can be found in communities like ours right here at Sunnyhill. When people ask why our congregation has experienced such rapid growth in the past several years, at least part of the answer can be found in this human response to stress that many of us have been experiencing. The stress and stress-produced hormones that have been pumping through our bodies have led us to this place and to one another. But this community building, empathy building, relationship building response to stress is a choice. Although our bodies are trying to steer us toward this healthy stress response, we can also choose to go in another direction. If the adrenaline and its accompanying fight or flight response prevail, and we make a choice to follow it, then we can end up in a very different place. A place where we become more isolated, more fearful, more likely to dwell in distrust and hatred than in compassion and love. Magaw concludes her talk by saying, and when you choose to view stress in this way as something that steers us toward compassion, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges, and you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone. The cedar of Lebanon, a tree that thrives in rocky places, is mentioned more than a dozen times in the Bible. Psalm 92, verse 12 reads, "The righteous flourish like the palm tree and grow like a cedar in Lebanon." It's no accident that the psalmist mentions the cedar in Lebanon, for even in ancient times, these trees were known for their ability to grow successfully in areas where other kinds of plants might not survive. These trees served as a deep metaphor for the righteous life, for turning toward compassion in stressful times and difficult situations, for choosing to root themselves in life-sustaining love rather than deathly fear and hatred. Here in Mount Lebanon, a town that was named for two cedar of Lebanon trees that a Presbyterian minister, Joseph Clokey, planted in his front yard near Bower Hill Road in 1850. Here in this place, we have an opportunity to respond to the multitude of stressors that we are facing in a way that, in the words of our mission statement, builds a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. The stress of our times and of our lives need not defeat us. If we have learned anything from the history of our country, it is that out of the crucible of stress and strife, something great can emerge. The stress of our times and of our lives need not defeat us. As Unitarian Universalists, we have a track record of coming together in stressful times to march and organize and to work together to build the world we are dreaming about. The stress of our times and of our lives need not defeat us. In fact, if we respond to all this stress in a healthy way, it will strengthen us. It will make us better people. It will turn us toward a righteous love that drives out fear. In the words of Clarissa Pinkola Estes, "My friends, do not lose heart. We were made for these times." One of the most common and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. This light throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. Remember, when a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. I say to you this morning, we were made for these times. Like a tree growing in a rocky place, like a light in the darkness, like a great ship at sea, we were made to come together to build a more just and compassionate community in times just such as these. I hope and pray that as we face the stress of our times and of our lives, we will be faithful to the call to respond in love, that we might live like a cedar in Lebanon, like a soul that catches fire, like a ship that takes us safely through the wildest storm of all. May it be so. Amen. Please rise in body and your spirit and join in singing My Life Lives On. We have a designated offering today that's going to support the Allegheny Land Trust. It's a nonprofit that has protected more than 2,500 acres of greenland in Allegheny and Washington counties. Among their current projects is a 40.5-acre Bethel Greenway project located in nearby Ethel Park, near the intersections of Route 88 and Connor Road and Valley Drive, one of the largest remaining green spaces in the municipality of Bethel Park. If you're writing a check today, please make it out to UUCSH with Allegheny Land Trust or ALT in the memo line. Thank you.
We extinguish this flame
for not the light of truth, the warmth of community,
or the
or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Take from life its coals, not its ashes. Fan the flames of love and justice. Join hands and hearts in common endeavor, and there will be no limit to what we can achieve together. Go in peace.